Hi, Bipin, can you hear me?
Hey Aditya, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. While you set up your screen share, I'm just going to go through a quick introduction about you.
Sure.
Okay, so we have with us today Mr. Bipin Kulkarni. He's a cybersecurity evangelist. So he's going to be talking about a very interesting topic, the evolving landscape of cybersecurity. Again, this is very relevant today because of the situation that we are in. So a little bit about Bipin. Bipin has over 20 plus years of experience in architecting and providing security solutions, services, and managing enterprise level security portfolios. He is a chief information security specialist at Seculibrium Services and Solutions in the United Kingdom. Bipin is experienced in developing and optimizing vulnerability management programs, identifying risks, conducting impact analysis, identifying security controls and implementation, and stakeholder management, and heading IT security risk management, major incidents, and strategy meetings. So this is a little bit about Bipin. With that, I'm going to leave the stage to Bipin. The stage is all yours, Bipin.
Right. Thanks, Aditya. Is my screen visible? Sorry, didn't hear that. Am I visible and am I audible? Aditya, I think I lost you.
You're visible, you're audible. Sorry, my microphone is muted. You're visible and you're audible. Perfect.
Right. Thanks, Aditya. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on which country you're in. All right. So we're going to talk about the evolving landscape of cybersecurity, and I think it's an interesting topic to discuss where we are, why we are at, and how we are going to go ahead. Right. To start off with, I mean, we have looked at cybersecurity from a completely different perspective. We have evolved over a period of time. The evolution of which lacks a certain focus, but I'm hoping that in the near future we do achieve that. To start off, we've always reacted to cybersecurity by looking at attacks. So I will compartmentalize cybersecurity as looking at malwares or a script-based attack. I will look at IDS, IPS in a different mechanism, and I'll try to figure out how somebody's trying to attack me from different perspectives, right? Then we realize that, you know what, only attacks don't make sense. There are different problem statements that need to be addressed to. And that's where we identified here, we probably want to look at threat factors or threat vectors and the risk an organization faces, right? Now, what is the difference that happened over here when we're trying to identify attacks? We're basically looking at it from a hacker's perspective, trying to figure out how they would attack us and using what medium. When we moved on to threats and risks, we started looking at it from a business perspective as well, where the organization that is being attacked, what is the problem that they are facing, to what extent, and so on and so forth. Today, we've got terms like threat intelligence, risk-based vulnerability management, which again look at it from a business perspective, rather than looking at it from a mixed perspective, right? And to give you an example, identifying attacks, we've looked at malwares since inception, right? We've got viruses, worms, trojans. We have been talking about rootkits, and all of these have been in existence since we actually started using computers. Even a script that is maliciously executed will be looked upon as a malware, right? And if you look at this chart in front of us, since 2009 to 2018, the chart is a little bit old, but you can see the increase in malware infection growth rate. Now, the evolution that we are talking about and the way we look at cybersecurity, if that would have been so effective, this growth rate would have been a little bit different. And I'm sure most of the peers will come back to me and say, Bipin, that's not a good analysis, because we also have to look at the shift in languages, the shift in technology, and the shift in how we have evolved using computers. And that's exactly what should have been the mindset when security was taken into place, right? Today, we've got a lot of keywords like secure by design, having a secure development lifecycle. And that's where we are trying to implement security right at the inception itself, rather than building up on top of it. But as you can see the chart, that there has been a phenomenal rise in cyber incidents, and we basically have been on the back foot. We have been defending ourselves against that, right? Thus, realizing that not only malwares and these kind of threats, we are also looking at attacks that can happen on different uh, vectors like network, operating systems, firmwares, hardware, applications, web applications. And today, the world being on the cloud, being always connected, these attacks are now live and can happen at any point in time, right? So what have we done as an evolution towards these practices is we have tried to identify and create different security controls to target these particular attacks. So if I'm worried about web application security, I'll have a team focusing only on that. So I'll have a bunch of individuals, experts who can do pen testing on an application, who can do SQL injection, probably can talk about looking at secure coding practices, and they will look at how a database is affected, how that application is affected. However, these bunch of individuals may not have the required expertise to look at operating system attacks, where there's a different team coming in, looking at patch management, looking at how configuration of an operating system should be done to complement the application. And therein, somewhere lies the gap, because the operating system guys may not have enough expertise to look at the hardware, right? And when we say hardware, the hardware is coupled up with firmware, where there are some instruction sets on the hardware itself that allow the hardware to function. And then we add the TCP/IP layer to it, the networking comes into the picture, and then it changes the entire scape, right? Then we're looking at intranets, internets, LANs, WANs, MANs, and then we have a lot of different configurations based on a lot of different requirements that the business wants to cater to, right? So from a layered approach, even if you look at a defense in depth approach, we have different layers that we have created that are supposed to complement each other, but have no interaction with each other whatsoever, right? And if you look at it, in today's world, we would have these different 5 levels of security parameters implemented in our organization. The first one would be an unaware organization that just doesn't know how to deal with security and has no plan or has no policies designed towards cybersecurity to prevent them from being compromised. The second level would be a SOC that we all must be very conversant with and think about as one of the ideal scenarios. However, a SOC is always reactive, right? You're analyzing the current network communications, the current connectivity that you have, and then you're trying to figure out if something is wrong, right? There is a possibility where you can have a proactive SOC as well, but that's kind of quite expensive. And then you're adding a lot of processes, a lot of what you can say, platforms that get integrated, and thus the focus might shift and may not be able to, what you can say, capitalize on what you're trying to build. So what I'm trying to say here is moving from a reactive phase to a proactive phase is not going to be easy. And you'll have to be very hands-on with a very specialized team to achieve that particular level. And then we got the anticipatory level. I'm sorry, you're going to be listening to sirens in the background. That's what work from home has done to us. I live on a high street, so there's a hospital on one end and a police station on the other end. So these things, I mean, I can't help it. Sorry about that. Coming to the anticipatory part. Anticipation is where you're looking at, let's say, adding threat intelligence to your proactiveness, right? So your proactiveness is where let's say you got a SOC, you got an IDS, IPS, you got an SIEM tool, you're analyzing everything, and you are proactively looking. You have a well-developed vulnerability assessment and penetration testing team who is trying to test your network on a regular basis and trying to figure out what problems are so that you can mitigate them, right? Anticipation is where you're adding threat intelligence to that mix, where you're looking at the current cyber trends that are going on, what kind of attacks are going on in the market, and based on that, you're trying to analyze your information security to see if you're facing any of those kind of traffics or connections or any of those mechanisms. And the last one is an artificial intelligence platform where we try to add intelligence to the devices itself. We add machine learning to it so that over a period of time, the machine itself starts analyzing, creates a baseline of what your traffic has been, what is allowed traffic, and then tries to build a profile so that it can detect automatically if there is any change, a deviation in the communications that have been happening, right? Now, to achieve all of these levels, it's not just implementing softwares. You need people and the right kind of people to achieve this, right? So if I go into the marketplace today, and if I start looking at penetration testers, and I only hire them, I may be looking at the proactive part, but the proactive lacks the reactive at that point in time. If I've got a fully developed SOC, I miss the proactive part. If I have got both of them implemented, tying up a penetration test to a SOC becomes a headache, right? Uh, to achieve that, the organization requires a huge level of maturity, right? And so far, in all of these phases, we have only been talking about the security aspect, the security team having achieved that competence of providing these services. What we lack here is the business culture that comes along with the implementation of these programs, right? We'll touch upon that in a bit. But when I say the business culture, it's basically how the business allows their employees to interact with their IT systems, to interact with their technologies, and to achieve their business roles out of that technology, right? So currently, these are the 5 phases that we are at. Depending on the budget of that organization, the maturity of that organization towards IT security, and the skill sets that they possess, you might want to achieve some of these, right? And to achieve these, we have developed a lot of best practices as well. So if you go into the marketplace, you'll come across a zillion best practices that are based on countries, industries, international trade, and whatnot, right? So based on industries, if I'm in the payment card industry, I have PCI DSS coming in. If I'm in the health and in the Americas, I've got HIPAA coming in. If I'm in the UK or EU, I've got GDPR coming in for certain areas, and then the country-based laws. That's what I just said. And the international trade, where let's say I in the UK want to talk to California, where they have their own privacy act, their own security requirements, and then me trying to streamline those practices to fit the bill, right? The problem with best practices is, though they are a good standard, a baseline for an organization to follow, the end decision is always with what the business requirements are, right? They try to bring a balance between the security and the business needs, but at the end of the day, the decision is always of the organization of which approach to take. For example, end of the day, an organization will always look at ROI, return of investment, right? So if my organization has identified a particular risk based on a threat and an attack that has been perceived, I have achieved the reaction level and the proactiveness where I've got a penetration team that has identified these, right? And I put it into a business impact analysis scenario. The business need would be that profits come first. At this point in time, and not only no organization on this planet at this point in time would willfully spend more on security than what is required, right? And that is where the risk management comes in. The risk appetite of an organization comes in, and that's where we are at right now, right? Earlier, when we were looking at a fragmented scenario where we wanted to look at malwares and protection against different attacks, now we have evolved into a threat-based risk management exercise where the business decides, based on the budgets, based on the money that they're willing to spend, which risks they want to accept, which risks they want to mitigate, and which risks they want to outsource. Ignoring a risk, thankfully, is no longer an option based on the countries and the laws that they have created. So thankfully, that's come in to help organizations at least achieve some level of security and have evidences gathered around them. Now, based on this, we look at this market trends. So in 2017, the cybersecurity marketplace was around $137.63 billion. Over a period of time, it has grown to 2022, 184.19 billion, and is projected to reach 248.26 billion by 2023. Now that's all money, right? And that's all repositioning and positioning of the security softwares, the security monikers that are utilized these days: next gen firewalls, next gen something, and previous gen something, and so on and so forth, right? So if you look at it from a career perspective as well, this becomes a very lucrative market, because if you look at the exponential growth factors, and we're talking about in billions of dollars here, the skill set and the jobs are there. However, how we map those skill sets across those 5 parameters that we saw earlier, that's where we want to focus upon. So from a career perspective, for a cyber infosec professional, it's not only just learning about SOC, it's not just learning about proactiveness, where I want to become a penetration tester. It's not only about having a particular skill set, right? It's basically how you can merge these skill sets together and achieve the goal of an organization to be somewhat cyber secure, right? There is no such thing as 100% security. And like I say, if there would have been, all of us would have been attending different job functions right now, looking to upskill ourselves out of security, right? So the way I've been looking at security over the past 20 years that I've been working in this market, currently we look at security from 2 perspectives. First, business needs and justification, and the second, technology changes and the business adaptation. So if I look at the first part, business justifications, right? Now, when I say cybersecurity comes after the business has identified with which technology to go, right? So currently, most of these technologies are also identified based on the budgets and based on how they want to take the product that they have to the marketplace. And then the return on investment, risk analysis, business impact analysis, the legalities of what needs to be adhered to, what needs to be provided comes in, and then we try to integrate cybersecurity in those solutions that we have architected, right? If you look at the certifications as well, if I look at architecting a data center, right? A very small part of it actually focuses on security. Most of it focuses on building the data center, having it effective enough so that the business requirements have been met, right? If I look at it from a technology perspective, there have been businesses that have migrated to newer technology to mitigate the existing risks that they have, right? And when we say cyber risks or information technology risks, we also talk about business continuity, and we talk about resiliency as well, BCPTR, disaster recovery. So I've seen organizations talk to me saying, Bipin, we are on-prem right now and we are facing these problems. If we go to the cloud, can we resolve these problems and say that we are cyber secure? To a certain extent, yes. If you shift technologies which have been built to cater to those problems, I'm sure you will be able to mitigate or limit most of those or some of those risks or some of those vulnerabilities that you have identified. However, have you analyzed that this new technology that you're trying to adapt, how is it going to affect your organization? How is it going to affect the culture of the organization? For example, sorry, I just lost my thought process. The culture of the organization. So for example, my people have been skilled and have been focused on some certain aspects of cybersecurity and some certain aspects of performing their job profiles, right? So I got cybersecurity experts, I've got technology experts, I've got people who are already dealing with a matured infrastructure, and thus they are very well aligned with that. The moment I throw a new technology in the mix, and let's say I try to migrate from on-prem to the cloud, not only am I just looking at a new technology, I am disturbing the fabric of my organization, where now I have to ensure that the entire organization upskills itself to be conversant with the cloud. And I'm not talking only about the security guys over here, even your developers, not only your IT guys, your non-IT guys who rely on the information technology and they want to migrate, right? So the problem here becomes multifold. your existing policies, your existing standards in the organization, the way security has been integrated or weaved into the fabric of that organization is going to change. Does the organization needs to mature enough to analyze the problems that they're going to face on the newer technology and then deal with it? And if you look at it, most of the organizations face this problem when cloud came onto the market. I've been dealing with clouds in 2007, 2008, and back then it was a very immature market where it was being sold more on the business resilience side than anything else, right? And the costing factor, saying, you know what, you don't have to worry about having an infrastructure, come to the cloud, it's cheap, it's very reliable, and you can start working on it. Over a period of time, we realized that, you know what, it may be true, but security is something that it lacks right now. And organizations, since they didn't know how to configure a cloud or lacked that special skill set, were not able to protect themselves against hacks, right? And even today, in today's world, the top attack vector for cybersecurity would be the cloud, apart from the IoTs and the edge computings that we have, right? So if you're looking at these new technologies, you first want to check whether cybersecurity has been integrated in this technology. How is it going to affect your current security structures, and how you're going to move from there? So to enhance that, we have these keywords that we utilize. Not only keywords, they are basically methodologies. A lot of thought has gone into them. A lot of involvement has gone into them. But we start off with secure software development lifecycle. So if I'm a product company developing an application, I would want to integrate a secure software development lifecycle. And that moniker, that term sounds awesome, but then with your agile methodologies and everything else coming in, how are you going to achieve? Is your organization mature enough to look at future threats and incorporate them while you're developing the software itself? Or later on, how are you going to evolve your software once you try to utilize this methodology? The second moniker that keeps on popping up on my radar is secure by design. And it has its own shortcomings. And I have a problem with that statement as well, because if I look at the IoTs that have been positioned in the market right now, if I look at edge computing, the way it has been utilized right now, secure by design is what it lacks, right? Everybody and anybody would come in on the bandwagon and try to utilize this terminology. But that's where we want to take a step back and say, hey, by secure by design, what do you mean by that? What analysis that have you done towards your attacks, towards your threats, towards the technology that you're utilizing, to see what kind of security risks you envision in the future, and how are you going to mitigate them with existing standards, right? Add to that, we've got the threat intelligence and risk-based vulnerability management solutions coming in, where they say, you know what, we can analyze a lot of data. We're going to look at this from an artificial intelligence perspective. You're going to throw in machine learning. The machines will work for you. You don't have to work for them. And then we're going to figure out the best possible way to keep ourselves secure. And the latest one that I've seen is the threat attribution matrix, where it is not only what attacks you're facing, but who's attacking you, right? So in today's world, state-sponsored hacking is quite major. And a lot of countries are targeting other countries to see what they're doing to try to steal technology from them. So I was attending another event from Kaspersky the other day, and we were talking about threat attribution. So they have devised a solution based on some artificial intelligence analysis that they can analyze the traffic that you're getting. If it has been identified as a malicious traffic, they have signatures that are utilized globally to identify which group of hackers is trying to target you, so that you know what the next targets would be like, or the next attacks would be like. For example, a group, let's say Sandworm or Shadow Brokers, they have a particular methodology of hacking. They launch a particular attack, then the second wave, then the third wave, and they focus it on certain devices based on the vulnerabilities that they've identified, right? So if those patterns come up to the fore, you already know what kind of threat, what kind of organization is attacking you, and then you can take preventive steps to secure those infrastructures even before those attacks happen, the second wave or the third wave comes in. So this is how we have evolved, and these are the four major parameters that I've seen used in the current market as far as security is concerned, right? But I've always seen security come as an afterthought, right? We have this technology, we want to use this for a business justification. Now that we have deployed it, now let's talk about security and see how we can integrate security, right? However, in our daily lives, and I can give you very basic and simple examples, whatever activity that we do as an individual or as a person that affects our family, we always look at security first, right? In sports, you go to bungee jump, right? Are you worried about your security? Definitely yes. The first thing that on your mind is, I should not die. I need to tie myself up really well. Even if you're traveling, air travel, the first thing that you look at is, you know what, the travel history of that airline, the success ratios, insurance even on your daily commute, right? You're going on a bike, you're going to wear those helmets, you're going to pad yourself up, and so on and so forth. So with everything, you always have security first. But in IT, security always has been bolted up, right? We have secure by design now, but as we go ahead, we'll see how that evolves and where we actually reach with that. The reason, because the more you invest in security, the costlier the products, the more the time to market, and thus the lack of proactiveness in security, saying, you know what, we are a business, we are here to make business, to earn money, not to secure the product, but we can deal with it as it goes. So with that thought process in mind, this is where we are at. Security has always been an afterthought. We now want to integrate security in a different manner, but we've still not achieved it, right? And that brings us to the weakest link. Now, I know everybody talks about it and it says humans are the weakest link and we can do nothing about it, but that's what your problem is. If you start treating your humans as your first line of defense, you'll probably end up mitigating more attacks from the human perspective rather than from your IDS, IPSs, or your SOCs or your anything else, right? So why don't we make this link stronger? I'm not talking about making everybody a hacker or training everybody to do a penetration test. I'm talking about your pure and plain and simple security awareness, the do's and don'ts of your regular life. Look at the Nigerian frauds, right? It still exists. You receive an email saying somebody has died somewhere, left a fortune, and out of the 7 billion people on this planet, you have been chosen because your email address popped up first, and they want to send a lot of money through you to save on taxes, at the same time willing to give you 50% of that money. Doesn't make sense, but people click on those links. Ransomware, if you look at WannaCry, not PTR, though they were very technologically advanced, they still needed that human to click on that link to make that attack successful. None of your technological instances at that point in time, none of your SOC techniques, your penetration tests, none of your artificial intelligence, machine learning, none of those techniques mattered because nobody knew what to look out for. This was a new attack, and it was always on the gullibility of a human. If you look at Stuxnet and read that history, it's again based on the gullibility of a human. And if that is our weakest link and we are doing nothing about it, no matter what fortresses you build, that fortress will still not be secure enough because this human left a back door open through which an army could walk in, right? So it's all about security awareness. If that person doesn't click on that link, or if that person is encouraged to report a possible suspicious email, and then a security team can analyze it, most of your attacks can be mitigated. So I'm not saying this is the only way to focus, but if you add this to the previous mix that we had, right? If you look at these four and we're throwing in artificial intelligence and machine learning, why don't we throw in a little bit of human intelligence so that people are more aware of what to do and what not to do, right? The same observation, if a person is traveling, that same person is traveling from work to home and vice versa, they're protecting their life and their family by doing something proactive. Why can't the same person be more proactive towards cybersecurity, learn some basics of what to do's and what to don'ts, so that this person can also protect the organization that he or she is working in, right? So that's basically the weakest link so far. We have treated it as the weakest link, but now we need to treat it as the first line of defense and then position our security uh, devices to support humans in their quest for cybersecurity, right? And if you look at this chart, this is taken in from October of 2019. And what are the next 12 greatest threats that your firm will face as far as security is concerned? Sorry about the pop-up. But if you look at the first three, email and phishing scams, end user carelessness, and the third is social engineering, right? Phishing scams are at 96%, end user carelessness are at 76%, and the social engineering attacks are at 70%. If these humans are properly trained, and if we can mitigate these to at least a very realistic 50%, imagine the amount of money saved by that organization because somebody just didn't click on a link and that cyber incident never happened. Now, it is very difficult to measure that as far as return on investment is concerned. But I mean, that's where we are at. We have identified these are biggest threats and we are doing nothing about it. We are basically looking at creating password policies, having IDSs, IPSs, and a proactive approach with artificial intelligence and machine learning implemented, right? So what to expect and why is this more important with COVID-19? If you look at this webinar right now or this reinvent that Rocheston is taking, which should have been physical or would have been physical once upon a time, is now all virtual. All of you must be facing this issues where you're working from home. Even me, you just heard a few sirens going on, right? And I'm working from home. So do you think I've got an industrial level firewall or an industrial level solution at home to protect from cybersecurity attacks? You think my Wi-Fi is that protected? I can spend that much money, or my company will spend that much money on protecting my smart TV or the Amazons or the Google devices that we have at home, right? No. So with COVID-19, we now face a problem of having a fragmented workforce and a distributed physical asset system. So your assets have been distributed across the globe. They're working from home, which is no longer a secure solution. And now the technologies that you have built are somewhat useless because if the PC that I'm using at home has already been compromised, even your VPNs that you're going to integrate may not be that fruitful, right? So the main things that now we are going to face, and if you have seen and if you have been following the COVID-19 fiascos and the attacks that we have had, there have been applications that have been released by hackers that track the COVID-19 perpetration in your area. And when you download and install it, it installs a malware in the background, which gives a backdoor entry to that particular attacker, right? And if that is a device that I also use with my company to access my company emails, a lot of confidential data is going to get leaked out because of that, right? So it's not me promoting use security at home or you implement firewalls at home. It's just educating these people that even if you're at home and you receive these emails, or if you receive such communications, or if you are redirected to such a website, these are the mechanisms, these are the things that you want to verify and then only proceed with caution. If you have a problem, connect to the IT department, they will analyze that data for you and they'll probably help you out to identify whether it is legitimate or not. Err on the side of caution rather than just jump into the fray and get infected, right? So that is what I feel is the future of cybersecurity. Fragmented human resources, distributed digital assets, managing them is going to be a pain in the wrong place, and user awareness being the top priority. So if take back from here, we have our proactive, reactive, artificial intelligence enabled devices and solutions that can be implemented. They lack human intelligence. Add to that, educate the human, get them the basics, do's and don'ts, and you'll still be a lot safer than otherwise, right? need to stop looking at humans as the weakest link, start to focus on them as the first line of defense. If these users are aware of the do's and the don'ts, you're better off, right? With the current security control landscapes, you want to add this to your portfolio. And that's what I wanted to cover for this session. I hope I've been on time and I've not taken too much time. And I'm open for questions now.
We're on time.
Perfect.
Yes. So thank you for that very informative session about how the landscape is evolving and some of the new technologies that are coming in. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions from our audience. So any questions, guys? Before that, I'm going to start off by asking you a question. Now, you did mention about how a lot of satellite offices are coming in now. All of us are working from home. But currently, the number of devices that we have to protect are still limited. Probably a mobile phone, an iPad, a smart TV, one, and your laptop. Now, with the evolution of IoT, as you said, there's no security baked in when you start talking about IoT. And you can't exactly rely on people to be securing these devices and using best practices for these devices. How do you solve this problem? Because once IoT comes in, the attack points and the attack surfaces are going to become so much more. So how do you foresee or predict the cybersecurity industry evolving or fixing this problem?
To be honest, I've been involved in a lot of these discussions here with some trade organizations in the UK. And the best way forward is to actually just start developing a standard. Because if you look at IoT, anybody and everybody comes up with a solution based on whatever they figure is the answer to a problem. But even the operating systems that they're utilizing, the devices that they're utilizing, they lack the standardization of what they should have, so that security can even be baked in later on. If you look at IoT devices, most of them are so minuscule that at the end, you cannot include, let's say, even a digital certificate on it for verification parameters, and encryption is totally out of the question. So standards first. Once we have that infrastructure based on those standards, then maybe we can evolve on the security part.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Just waiting. Okay, I'll ask you another question. Now, we have a lot of claims from companies coming about security baked into the products. You have Apple with the iPhone. They're talking about the T1 and T2 security chips where everything is stored locally, nothing is sent to the cloud. And then what was found to be a vulnerability with with Samsung and the SSD drives. They said it was automatically encrypting data, but it was not. So when all of us are these are big companies, so all of us are purchasing these products with belief in those companies that, okay, they're saying security baked in. But how do you deal with these problems? Because again, they have flaws as well.
The thing is that these kind of flaws, zero-day attacks, they cannot be envisioned. I mean, they are creating a technology which is proprietary to them. We trust them that they have secured it or they have tested it in such a perspective that it has been secure. So even if I ask or anyone offers, say, a government authority or a standard authority should question that, it cannot be questioned because of the copyrights and the trademarks that they will have. So it has, some of the responsibility has to be on the organization, and there's no way forward from that unless and until you look at the end of capitalization.
Okay, thank you so much. So any more questions, guys? Okay, I don't think we're getting any more questions from the audience. Thank you, Bipin. That was a very informative session. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Aditya. I hope everyone had a good time. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much, Bipin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.